If you live in a modern city like I do and perhaps like you do, you will notice the buildings around you don't particularly look that good. They're probably made out of steel or glass or reinforced concrete. Often they are made from a combination of all of those materials. But without fail, a lot of the modern buildings that we actually see or live or work in are extremely ugly. But not only that, they're also rather anti-human. Their lights are always on, you need air conditioning just to be able to survive in them. What on earth is going on with modern architecture? Why is it so ugly and also anti-human? Because compared to buildings in the past, well, they had something that we actually don't. They actually cared about beauty. I mean, just look at this building from 2,000 years ago, which is still in use to this day. Now look at this building that is less than 100 years old, but you notice it looks like something from a horrible sci-fi novel. So the question is, how do we go from this to this? Or in other words, why has progress made the world an uglier place? And to understand that, we need to go back in time, all the way back, in fact, to the Roman Empire. Because in 1 AD, the famous Roman architect Vitruvius said that a building needs 3 main qualities. It needs to be durable, it needs to have utility, and it needs to be beautiful. And according to the architects of the Roman era, every single building needed to have these 3 principles at play. And if we look at what has been built from 1 AD till the 19th century, it looks like those principles were largely incorporated into the buildings that we see. Anything of the ancient pyramids of Giza, to the Buddhist temples of China, to the Greek Parthenon, to even the Islamic temples of India. Architecture in the past was almost metaphysical. So the buildings were dedicated to the human world, but also to the metaphysical world or to the spiritual world. And all of them, without exception, are exceptionally beautiful. Because believe it or not, my friends, our ancestors believed that beauty was the defining characteristics of whatever they built. But it's important to note that beauty is not just about looking nice. It's not just about aesthetics. Because as Roger Scruton once says, experiencing beauty is the understanding that there's a harmony to something. And beauty is not just about art, but it's about ensuring that what we create fits into the world and adds a little bit more to the world as we know it. And if you look at the buildings that have defined our civilizations from wherever you might be, those buildings inevitably are extremely beautiful. But most importantly, they create a harmony within which the context that they are found. And a great example of this is actually the Pantheon, which I spoke about earlier. It was first built in 114 AD and is still used as a church to this very day. And within the Pantheon, those 3 characteristics of a good building is basically inscribed into the very marble. In terms of durability, it's over 2,000 years old. In terms of utility, it has been a Catholic church for close to 2,000 years and still is to this day. And as for beauty, well, I mean, that building has been copied over and over again. The Pantheon is the quintessential classical building that has great architecture. But unfortunately, everything changed in the 19th century. Because Louis Henry Sullivan was born in 1856 and he created the 3 most dangerous words in architecture. Form follows function. And according to form follows function, or functionalism as it was commonly known, is that a building must have a defined utility to the expense of everything else. So basically decoration, ornaments, or beauty are completely superfluous to the point of the building in the first place. So out of the 3 principles, utility, durability, and beauty, only utility was deemed to be the most important thing. And since then, the quest for utility of our architecture has basically destroyed cities and towns across the world. And unfortunately, this functionalism school has permeated to every single architectural college the world has ever known. But to really understand functionalism at its worst, we need to understand one particular architect, Le Corbusier. He was a Swiss architect who had a very totalitarian mindset because according to him, and I quote, "A house is a machine for living in." You can already see where this is going. So according to Le Corbusier, Paris, as we know it today, was just too awful for words because he had these grand boulevards that displaced the poor from the rich and, you know, it just didn't make any sense whatsoever. So he had a plan for Paris. It was called Plan Voisin, or it's called the Neighborly Plan. And what he wanted to do was actually destroy Paris as we know it today and erect 18 skyscrapers around the entire city. And these skyscrapers, of course, in the name of equality, would have tens of thousands of Parisians living in them. So this madman, Le Corbusier, the great architect, wanted to destroy the very essence of what Paris is. The big boulevards, the beautiful architecture, the beautiful gardens. He said all of that was completely superfluous. What we needed was utility. And for him, utility means replacing all of the beauty with skyscrapers. Thankfully, his plans for Paris failed to materialize, but you can see his sort of thinking when talking about architecture. Because one of my favorite philosophers is Edmund Burke, and he famously said, history is a pact between the dead and the living. But for Le Corbusier and everyone who has followed him, the dead don't matter at all. Because modernity only cares about living, and I use the term care very loosely. And to a modernist, our ancestors and what they believed and what they built means nothing. Because to a modernist, modern architecture is basically totalitarianism masquerading as design. And they see every village, town and city as a landscape for their dictatorship. So instead of sending people to gulags or passing oppressive laws, the architect uses space and design to make life shit for everyone. For example, Le Corbusier himself designed a playground on top of one of the buildings he designed in Marseille. And the playground was a flat concrete surface. There were no trees, no benches, no shade, nothing. For Le Corbusier, the essential modern architect, a playground means concrete. I mean, only someone who really hates humans thinks that concrete equals playground. And one would hope that Le Corbusier would be thrown into the dustbin of history, but unfortunately not. He is one of the most renowned architects the world has ever known. And his ideology about design and his ideology about being anti-human has also just permeated every single architecture school the world has ever known as well. So essentially, Le Corbusier and everyone who has followed him wants human beings to live in absolute misery. And they do so by using glass, steel and concrete to make buildings that sort of socially engineer the way we interact with each other. For a modern architect, a road is not something that people congregate on. A road is for transport, so therefore a road is only for cars and not human beings. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why would human beings want to use a road to talk to each other? Because to a modern architect, human emotion doesn't exist. For them, having a stroll on a street is just madness. The street is there for a particular purpose. It doesn't matter what the people living there actually think of the street. For a modern architect, the street is for transport and therefore it is only for transport. And if you look at a lot of our modern houses, it seems to have followed this functionalism quite drastically. Every house now is simply a functional space for people to live in the physical sense, of course, but not the spiritual sense. And because we live in a world of individualism, the incentive for an architect is not to make something look good that adds to what is existing already. The incentive of the modern architect is actually to have a revolution every single time they design a building. They don't seek harmony with the world, they want to put their stamp on the world. And you can only put your stamp on the world by creating the ugliest things possible. But if you look at the tourism figures for Europe as an example, where do you think tourists go? Do they go to the slums of Moscow? Do you think they go to some Soviet-era block in Ukraine somewhere to look at the buildings? No, my friends. Tourists go to beautiful places. So they go to the Eiffel Tower, they go to Notre Dame, they go to the Hagia Sophia in Turkey. Tourists go to beautiful areas that have beautiful architecture. So on one hand, you have architects who want to destroy the world and make it a lot uglier, but on the other hand, ordinary people go to the most beautiful places in the world and spend a hell of a lot of time and money in actually getting there. And this is where there's a disconnect between an architect and what people actually want. Because in the architect's mind, progress, in terms of what they are doing, means making the world an uglier place. But humanity just wants the world to be beautiful, which goes to the heart of this video, because progressivism, as we know it, is about things getting better over time. But if you look at modern architecture, that is obviously not the case. Because a modern building really represents modern life, because it is deformed in terms of how it looks, it is deformed in terms of how it functions, and most importantly, it is deformed in how it is spiritually. So in this particular case, i.e. architecture, progressivism has actually destroyed the world, has actually made the world much uglier, has actually made us human beings less happy than before. And I might make a video in terms of what the solutions to all these problems are, but if you did like this particular video, please let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, everyone. Always remember, human progress is a myth. See you in the next one. Bye.